Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan, and today is episode 125, and we're going to take a look at the International Union of Police Associations. This one I am a little bamboozled by because it's got a funky history, but it is a true international union in that they do have locations in the United States and Canada. But again, Canada, they don't have the same laws that we have, so I don't know why we are involved with Canada in any way, shape, or form. So it kind of takes me back. But they kind of have two separate foundings. The International Union of Police Associations was technically founded in 1979. But that name of International Union of Police Associations, also known as IUPA, is a derivative of a previous union that goes back to like 1950s or 60s. So it's one of those things that they change their name or they involve more people, and it just kind of seems like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So that concerns me with this organization. I also don't see where they have done any audits whatsoever, whether internal or external. And they've had some problems with the organization in terms of monies and being considered a good organization or not. So it's kind of concerning. But their headquarters is based out of Sarasota, Florida. This is the first time I've seen a union like this be headquartered out of Florida, but I bet it's to do with tax laws. A lot of labor unions that we have seen so far have been up north, up in the northeastern part of the United States. So this surprises me that they are down in Florida in terms of their location for their HQ. But in terms of their members, they have members located all over the United States and Canada. But if I had to suspect, again, the United States probably has way more members than Canada. Key people, their president is Sam A. Cabral, and they have, I guess, a newsletter or a magazine that goes out. It's called Newswatch, and it's specifically for, I guess, the people that work in, in police-type jobs. It's kind of unclear exactly what it talks about. So I don't know if it's more union-based in terms of that, or if it's more about, hey, here are some police stories, things like that. I don't really know what it discusses on that. They are affiliated with the AFL-CIO, and considering that they are not in cahoots with Canada, but they do have Canadian members, I'm surprised they're not affiliated with the Canadian Labour of Congress. So this one is kind of weird, because usually in times past we have seen that whenever they are an international union, especially in regards to Canada, they are under the umbrella of not only the AFL-CIO, but the CLC. This one is not, for whatever reason, so it's a little bizarre. It says the International Union of Police Associations, also known as IUPA, is a North American police union, so it's not even an American union anymore. It's North American, meaning it's a continent, basically. And it's chartered as a national union that represents law enforcement and support personnel with the AFL-CIO. It says local police unions join the IUPA to secure collective bargaining rights and afford their members job security. I don't blame them for that, although law enforcement has always been pretty much a secure job anyway, because almost every city or town has a police station and police officer, so I wouldn't think that they would have a problem finding a job, not by any means. It says the IUPA negotiates on behalf of local unions for better wages, benefits, and working conditions in their contracts. Now, I do get a little concerned when they're talking about working conditions, because as a police officer, your job is just naturally dangerous. So I don't know what they're referring to, unless they're talking about having access to good, appropriate equipment. That I would agree with. But the other stuff in regards to working conditions, being a cop is not easy. When you sign up to be a policeman or a policewoman, you're going to be put through the ringer just because of the nature of the job. Like, it's not a desk job. Most of them are not desk jobs. So I just wonder, what do they consider working conditions like this? I mean, it's almost like whenever you have oil rig workers. Well, oil rigs are naturally very dangerous places to work just because of the nature of the job. That doesn't mean you can't do the job, but it's just the nature of the job is that it's dangerous. It's just like a helicopter pilot, in the Marine Corps or the Army or the Navy. Of course, that's more dangerous than, being an admiral or a general that just sits in an office all day. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference in the working conditions on that. It says the IUPA offers assistance on such items as equipment recommendation or budget issues and will send a representative to speak for the union. Now, I get concerned with that because that's technically lobbyists. I don't trust lobbyists. I don't particularly like them, even though we're talking about a police association here. Lobbyists are not loyal to the United States. They're loyal to the highest bidder. So their loyalty can be bought and sold. So that's where I get concerned with stuff like that. Besides help with legal representation, the IUPA offers financial, insurance and health services, educational opportunities, police products, and home services. I don't know what home services means. I hope that doesn't mean that police officers get better treatment when going to the bank to get a loan, because I think that's favoritism. I don't like that. I think that should be illegal if it is not already illegal, because there is some favoritism towards veterans in terms of college education and getting a home loan. I don't agree with that at all. I think that's favoritism because, our tax dollars already paid for their service, and so now they're jumping in line again by getting a home loan, things like that. Like when people who have not fought in the military, sometimes they have a hard time getting a home loan, but yet, a military person can have horrible credit but yet get a really nice house. That's not right. Because we're the ones that supplied their equipment. We're the ones that paid their salary. So it's one of those things that you need to be respectful. Basically don't bite the hand that fed you. And so I think there's a lot of favoritism that goes on in regards to first responders, police officers, and our military when, we the citizens of the United States, we are citizens of the United States. We're not, only a few over here and a few over there, and it's not favoritism of the United States. We are all equals. It's just that someone has a different job. And there might be some that this offends you. Again, I don't care because I know I'm right. I know what it's like to be turned down because I'm not a veteran or I'm not in the military or I'm not in a military family. I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I'm still a person. I'm still a human being. I live in this country and my taxes pay for our military. So I think there should be respect and honor that goes both ways. I love our military. I think they're wonderful people. I very rarely meet someone that's a horrible person that's in the military. Most of the time, military people are very tough. What I don't like, and I've said this before in previous podcasts, is when their spouses, especially the wives, they act like they're in the military and act like they shouldn't have to pay any bills, especially when it comes to medicine, whenever they go to the pharmacy to pick up their medications, and I think that's wrong. They act like they're better than everybody else, and they act like they're in the military, and it drove us nuts at the pharmacy, because I used to work as a licensed pharmacy technician back in the day, and it just got old, the attitude problem of these military wives. I mean, they would yell at us, scream at us, curse at us. I mean, it was just hell. They would make scenes, and this is in Oklahoma in the Bible Belt. So just because someone is a Christian or lives in the Bible Belt, that doesn't mean that they actually are a Christian and that they actually walk the walk and talk the talk and that they actually believe in Jesus Christ. I think people believe in Jesus whenever they're in a foxhole and they're dying or they're getting shot at or getting beaten, but when it comes to everyday life, it's like he doesn't exist. And I'm just like, that's not being a good Christian. So that's just my personal experience. I hope and pray that you have never been yelled at or talked to the way that I've been spoken to in the past by military families. And also, cops' wives are really weird, especially if they're being beaten by their husbands, which they just need to leave them. But they typically don't leave their husbands because, first of all, it's domestic violence, it's mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and then also there's this thinking that, well, I want their benefits. So it also has to deal with money. So I don't always have a whole lot of sympathy for people that stay in a domestic violence situation, whenever they're just staying in it for the money. For the health insurance, for the life insurance. A lot of these wives, what they may not realize, that there are a lot of cops' wives that they're hoping that their husband dies on duty or on the job so that way they can get a big payout from the city. So, these cops' wives act all innocent. They're not. I'm not fooled by it, and I think it's horrible and cruel the way they view their husbands, the bad cop wives. Not all of them are bad, but a lot of them are very weird. Very weird. I'm not friends with any of them. I've worked with some women that are cops' wives. They're not normal. Sometimes they like to act like they're a cop and they're not a cop. And I think that that's a behavior problem. and it doesn't make sense. So there's a lot that goes into a job like this. And unfortunately, there are some people that are very weak-minded. And I don't mean necessarily women, but there are some people that are very weak-minded. And they take on this drama that they're not supposed to take on. And so that they make someone else's job their job. And it makes no sense to me because, the best way to have a great marriage is, once you leave your place of employment for the day and you're going home, nothing from work goes home with you, and nothing from home goes to work. I've never been married, but whenever I had a tough day at work, I never brought my work home with me. I never did that. Like the moment I stepped across the threshold of my door, to me it was a relief to be home. And to see my cats, or to go out with friends, or to have dinner with friends, things like that. And I've had some very stressful jobs over the years. But I made a point to set up a mental roadblock, a mental barrier to protect my private life from the stress of my work life. And I don't allow those things to intermingle. Unfortunately, in military families and cop families, this kind of stress intermingles all the time. And it's really difficult for people that are naturally weak, whether they are male or female. And I don't mean like in terms of physical ability, I mean like emotional weakness, mental weakness, psychologically not strong. Because I've noticed that just because someone makes a great cop, that doesn't mean that they would be great in the military. In fact, usually they do not work well in the military. Usually they're very combative. I've worked with guys like this. I worked in this one office, I've said this before, there's this one guy that he was ex-Marine, and I was like, why did they hire this guy? He is not office material. They put him as a manager over a few people. It was absolute hell. I felt sorry for his family. He's the one that was Catholic and also was trying to be a part of the Masons Lodge. I'm like, that's a cult. There's a reason why your priest is saying you cannot partake of communion. You cannot receive the Eucharist if you're also involved in this cult. Well, this guy, he valued this men's club basically more than he did his faith. So it was kind of those things that he didn't like being told what to do. And I was like, well, I don't think very many people like being told what to do. However, it's one of those things when you need to be told what to do, it's usually for good reason. And unfortunately, this guy just would not wake up to that, and he was just very combative. And so I knew just from working with him that there's no way he could ever work as a cop or as a sheriff because he's too bizarre. And it was really difficult working with him. I mean, I wasn't under him in any way, shape, or form, but my office was near him. And sometimes we would have conversations, but it almost always turned into him lecturing me about something. And I was like, whoa, this is just a regular everyday conversation. He goes, well, I just know a lot of history. I was like, I don't care. I was like, stop yelling at me. Like, don't talk to me like that. This is, we're comrades. We're coworkers. Yes, you're a manager in another department, but you're not my manager. So, we're just having conversations. So, needless to say, we didn't hardly talk anymore after that because of his behavior problem. I was like, this employer is very stupid to hire military people, especially from the Marines. Marine Corps people are not gentle people. And I'm not dissing on Marine Corps people, not by any means. It's just their temperament is not for a calm office. They need to have a job where they can actually yell at people, work on a construction site or something. There are other things, go work on an oil rig or go work with cows or something. Like something where you're outside. Because this guy was not an inter-office individual, so to speak. He did not understand how to work with that. And so I've noticed there are a lot of police officers that they don't know how to be gentle and kind. And I think they need to watch the Andy Griffith Show. Because, what's interesting is that whenever I meet a nice, kind cop, they're actually very tough and very strong. And what makes them unique is that they know when to be aggressive and when not to be aggressive. They know when to be tough and when not to be tough. Most citizens don't need to be made aware that a person is a cop. Usually they can tell by the attitude problem or the badge or the gun or the bulletproof vest or the uniform, the car, whatever the case may be, or just the language pattern really. They can tell when they're dealing with a cop. Most people are good, kind citizens, most. And so what sucks is whenever you have police officers that treat everybody the same. Like they're all bad instead of they're all good. So there's a, how do I describe this? There's this mentality within the police force that you're guilty until proven innocent. And I'm like, how would you like it if someone viewed you that way? I mean, that would be like your wife or husband constantly accusing you of cheating on you. And it's like, well, you're guilty until I can prove you're innocent. You know, would that make for a good marriage? No. I mean, it would more than likely destroy the marriage. It would end it. And, you know, that's on you for being stupid and falsely accusing your spouse of something they didn't do. But that's a very common behavior within the police force as well as in military families. So it goes on to say, apart from police officers, IUPA also represents some corrections officers and medical first responders. I find that kind of odd because they're not police officers. You know, correction officers are not police officers. They're not sworn in as a cop or a highway patrolman or a detective or anything like that. You know, it's almost like just a private sector job, and that's not to diss correction officers, not by any means. They are very much important, but they're not the same as a cop. I've met security guards and corrections officers. They act like they're a police officer, and it's really disturbing what they think, what they say, and what they do. And it's like, you know, I actually went on a date with a guy that either was a corrections officer or he was wanting to become one, and he just viewed himself as a cop. I was like, you're not a cop. That badge you have or the badge that you're trying to get, it's not the same as working for the city or the state. You know, most of our prisons are privately owned. So you're working in the private sector. You don't have a state job. But they don't understand that. But they're just so overly zealous to get that power and to get that authority. I think that's an issue. So I don't think people that have issues with a power struggle, I don't think they should be hired for those positions at all. I think they should be banned from them because they can't be trusted with authority. And I've met some of these people over the years, and they're both male and female. So you know, there's a character flaw, is what I'm trying to say. So they need to be more careful who they hire and not be afraid to fire. It says IUPA publishes Newswatch, a weekly publication for the law enforcement community. I don't know what it talks about, though. I don't know if it talks about their labor laws, their contracts, or issues within the police force. I just don't know. I find it kind of odd. The organization has been criticized for its status as a charity. It received a D- rating from the Better Business Bureau. I want to say this about the Better Business Bureau. You know, it's pretty bad when you receive a D- from the Better Business Bureau, because the Better Business Bureau, you can buy a good rating on there. Like, just because someone is registered with the Better Business Bureau, that doesn't mean they're a good business. Anybody can put their business on there. And anybody can make their business look good. But the fact that they have a D- says a lot. They must have received a whole lot of complaints that it looks this bad. So they couldn't buy their way out of it, basically. Okay, so they received a D- rating from the Better Business Bureau and was listed among America's worst charities by the Tampa Bay Times in 2014 because of their low spending on their mission. That tells me they've got some spending issues. IUPA operates under multiple trade names. That's kind of suspicious, including Police Officer Support Association and National Emergency Responders Coalition. See, they're not emergency responders. It's not the same title. It's not the same job. It says the majority of their budget is spent on fundraising. In 2017, the IUPA raised about $13 million through solicitors, of which almost $12 million went to the solicitors. So what does that tell you? They're not good at raising money, they're good at spending money. That's a big problem. In terms of leadership, the union has, as of 2020, 3 compensated IUPA officers, meaning they are paid positions. The first one is San Cabral, who has been international president since 1995, an officer of the organization since 1988. He's been in power way too long. That is an issue there. They need some new blood in there. Cabral retired in 1991 from the Defiance, Ohio Detective Bureau. Well, Defiance, why am I not surprised by that? Then it says Mike Crivolo is the international vice president and former union president from 2010 to 2018. Crivolo retired in 2009 from the USAF Security Police. I'm not even sure if that's a real police department, because whenever something says security police, I'm not really sure if that's real. Well, it's under the United States Air Force Security Forces, so It's real, but it's not the same as like a regular police officer. It's a military police is what I'm trying to say. So they're paid federally, not at a state level. And then it says in 2019, retired from the Milwaukee, Wisconsin Police Department. Oh, okay, so he was double dipping. Okay, this is what I don't like. There are so many people in our military, they double dip on income and benefits, and I think that's wrong. Because we, the taxpayers, are paying for that. So they're basically getting paid 2 salaries to do one job. And also they're receiving multiple benefits at a federal and state level and possibly a local level. That's wrong. So this guy was probably triple dipping. So, what's interesting is that people shame and blame Wall Street. How can these high execs get paid these monies over here, these monies over here? How can they get multiple retirement plans? That's wrong. Well, here's the thing. If it's wrong, if it looks bad, or if it's wrong for someone on Wall Street to do that, then why is it not wrong or look bad whenever a police officer does this? Or someone in the military? Military people are notorious for triple dipping and double dipping all the time. And that really bugs me because it's wrong. It's stealing. It's thievery. It's not right. That's our tax dollars that could be going towards somebody else who's not overfeeding at the trough, as they say. It says its board further consists of a number of uncompensated vice presidents and a total of 16 voting board members in 2016. I find that really weird. Like, why do you need more than one vice president? See, organizations like this, something tells me there's something going on with the money, because why else would you have so many officers and they have the same title? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, it'd be like if the United States had multiple vice presidents. We don't need that. We don't have that, don't need it, don't want it. So it's kind of one of those things. So the history of this organization actually goes back to 1954, like what I was talking about previously. It says in 1954, the predecessor of the IUPA, the National Conference of Police Associations, also known as NCPA, was founded in an effort to strengthen bargaining efforts. In 1966, Canadian associations were allowed to join. I think that's a mistake. And the name was changed to International Conference of Police Associations and later to International Union of Police Associations. Let's see. IUPA was founded in 1979 as a national union under AFL-CIO. It was reported to have 51,000 members as of 1980 and claimed to represent over 100,000 members in 2018. However, on its 2016 Form 990, it was reported it had a much lower number of 19,200, so that is suspicious there, for sure. It says, since 2005, it is headquartered in Sarasota, Florida. I think that has to deal with money and tax laws. And it purchased a building there in 2018 as its headquarters, so it's definitely not going anywhere. It really likes that tax haven of Florida. So what's interesting about these unions is that unions love a tax haven, but a lot of them are Democrat. This one, they behave Democrat. However, I think they swing towards the Republican side whenever they want to look like they care about the law or when they want to look like they care about the country. And perhaps they really do care, but what's interesting is a lot of these labor unions, they're usually Democrat and liberal, and the only time they come across as conservative or Republican is whenever they need money or numbers. When I say numbers, I mean members. They need more people. So in 2016, the IUPA was one of several law enforcement organizations who support federal legislation to renew the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Program. In 2020, IUPA spoke out about the importance of mental health concerns for law enforcement. I agree with that. Describing stress as a bigger threat to police officer safety and well-being than violence. I agree with that because if you get an angry cop, someone that's not dealing with his or her life very well, they're going to go off and they're going to be a nut. That's just how it is. In 2017, the IUPA, together with the Ohio State Troopers Association, filed a lawsuit against a Florida company for manufacturing defective bulletproof vests. I think I know who they're talking about. This might have been the people that were making vests. There is this guy that got busted, and it was on American Greed. He was making bulletproof vests for cops, and they were supposed to, or no, for the military. He was making them for the military, and they may have been used for police officers as well, but he got busted for having sweatshops and having, what's it called? Basically subpar, ineffective, bulletproof vests that did not protect our military or our police officers. And he also got busted for the sweatshop as well. And it interfered with labor rights and things like that. So there's a lot going on there. I'll double check and see if that's the same company, but it's ringing a bell because I've watched American Greed. It's a really neat show. It says also in 2017, a IUPA spokesperson was quoted as warning about law enforcement officers being endangered by carbon monoxide fumes from defective Ford Explorer patrol cars. I'm not surprised by that because Ford Explorers are not the best. I look at it this way. If I was married to a cop, I would want the best possible vehicle for my husband. I would want the best possible equipment for him. Nothing defective. I want top of the line. I don't care if it's a Mercedes-Benz, all decked out to be a cop car, not a military car, because we are not supposed to militarize our police officers and our police forces. Those are two totally separate law enforcement entities. They should never overlap. One of the problems that no one likes to talk about is that there are some police agencies and police units that they are being allowed to militarize. Like there's some that want to purchase a tank and have purchased a tank. When I say a tank, I mean like a military tank. It's ridiculous. Do they really expect to drive that down Main Street because there's such a big issue? No, they just love spending money. And it's a big problem. Because there's a lot of greed, within the public sector, that's for sure. In 2018, IUPA was one of several organizations who supported the Providing Officers with Electronic Resources Power Act to give various law enforcement access to screening devices suitable for detecting drugs such as fentanyl. In September 2019, well over a year before the elections, the union formally endorsed the re-election campaign of Donald Trump while stating that the Democratic contenders vilified the police. In June 2020, during the George Floyd protest, the AFL-CFO rejected demands by the Writers Guild of America East and others to expel IUPA. Not all unions are equal in the eyes of liberals and the eyes of fascists. It's like either do what we want or we want to kick you out. So, I kind of feel like this association is kind of the underdog. Even though they do have some issues, they do have some problems. And, I'm not always a huge fan of police officers, per se. I do respect them and, I do pray for them and I honor them. I honor, the badge. So if you honor the badge, you honor the person. It's just Oklahoma has had some really bad cops here. It's not as bad as other places like Chicago and Detroit and different parts of New York City. And we for sure do not have corrupt police officers like they do in other countries, like in China, Jamaica, Iran, parts of Russia, some of these villages. Corruption is everywhere on the planet. That doesn't mean we tolerate it or embrace it. But, we do need to take into account here that the United States, are we perfect? No. But we are way better off than other countries in terms of not having, we don't have corruption like other countries. The reason why is because we fight it. We report it. And we actually put people in prison for it. In other countries, like Jamaica and Mexico and other places, you can buy your way out. And as long as you know a good government official, when I say good, I don't mean that they're good-natured per se. I just mean that, hey, that you've got them in your back pocket, or they know you and you know them, or maybe you got something on them, whatever the case may be. It's who you know. In other countries, in the United States, it's not who you know. Because whenever a who you know case comes out, it's always a scandal because that's not how our laws work. It's not about who you know. It's about honoring the law and honoring the laws of the land and obeying those laws. So it's one of those things, that's why I always have a strict policy about everything I do has to be legal and moral. Because just because it's legal doesn't mean it's moral. So it's one of those things that, some people might think, oh, you're so square, you're old fashioned. I was called that when I was in my teens and 20s. I was called that. But I was like, you know what? I just don't want a crazy, borderline or even illegal lifestyle. I just don't operate that way because I think you're asking for trouble. And I was never even tempted to do any of that kind of stuff. I guess I prefer to be in my house, my own home. I don't believe in shacking up. I don't live with other people. I believe in being responsible for myself. I believe in being successful and doing good. I literally keep it that simple, and I love baking at home. I love doing that. I mean, I love going out to eat, but, there are just things that I very much value and treasure, and I'm not going to give that up just for some excitement. I just don't think it's worth it, because I value happiness more than I do a thrill. I've never been a thrill seeker. I'm not really adventurous per se. Probably the most adventurous thing I do is try a different vegetable or a different kind of fruit that I've never tried before, because different types of food traumatize my taste buds. And that probably sounds extreme, but literally that's probably the most dangerous thing I do is try new foods, because I've tried some really gross dishes over the years. And one of the grossest foods I've ever eaten is a sweet potato casserole. I hate that thing. If I was in the military, and let's say, for example, I ran out of weapons, I would totally bake a whole bunch of sweet potato casseroles and just bomb them on people. Just bomb it on our enemies. Just drop it on their house and be like, eat that sucker. Like, I don't want it, don't like it. And plus, sweet potatoes, when they're hard, they can definitely hurt your head. But it's just one of those things like, I could care less if we had a famine on sweet potatoes, because they are so gross. I don't like sweet potato fries. They stink, they smell, same word kind of thing, but, and they just taste gross to me, like they make me gag. And I hate that sweet potato casserole that has marshmallows on top. Gagged me with a spoon. It was so disgusting, so awful. And I was forced to eat that as a little kid. And I don't know why, but my mother for years, she goes, oh, I thought this was your favorite. I'm like, I have always detested it. I have never liked it. Stop baking it for me. I don't like it. And for some reason, because everybody else liked it, she thought I liked it. I was like, no, sweet potatoes. No. I cannot stand those. Anyway, I think you get the point. I really detest sweet potatoes. Needless to say, my mother now knows that I love russet potatoes. Just a plain baked potato for me, I'll be perfectly happy. I typically don't even eat a loaded baked potato. I just prefer something plain. I'm very mellow in terms of, what I cook and things like that. But I do love bell peppers, but, I'm getting off track anyway. That is it for this podcast. Again, this is the International Union of Police Associations. I do think they need to be audited. I think they need to have an internal audit and an external audit. I really am concerned that they keep promoting they have like 100,000 members when technically they barely have a little over 19,000. I think they have problems with fundraising, and I think they overspend on fundraising. I don't think the money is going where it needs to go, which makes me wonder, what are their members paying for? Are their members getting proper representation? Like, even though I'm not always a huge fan of cops, let me say this. I don't like bad cops. I love good cops. Good cops, they're so sweet and kind. I don't like bad cops. I do think that regardless of our circumstances, that if this union and this association is making promises to get better bargaining rights and to get better contracts for police officers, then those unions' dues, those membership dues, need to go towards those members, not towards all this other stuff, like towards fundraising. I think they need to be fiscally responsible. They need to be financially responsible for these things. And if I was a member of this association, I would want to see, okay, can you give us a glance at the books here? Can we see some financial audits? And here's the thing, the word audit to me, because I've worked in accounting for 13 years now, the word audit is not scary to me. It means nothing to me. It doesn't scare me, it doesn't traumatize me, it doesn't concern me. Audits to me are a normal part of business. Like, if you own a company, whether it's small, medium, or large, it doesn't matter if it's nonprofit or not, you want to have an audit. You need to have an audit every year, probably twice a year. I don't think you need to have it quarterly, because I think that's excessive. But I do think you need to have an audit at least every year, and have an internal and external audit, and make sure you hire, in terms of external audit, you need to hire a company that you don't have an association with, basically. Because the last thing you want is to have an audit done and it goes bad and something doesn't show up right, and then it doesn't get corrected, and then it come to find out, the only reason why you hired this auditing firm is because they were in your back pocket. And sometimes that happens with these organizations. It's like who you know kind of thing. Well, if it was me, I would hire someone that we do not already have a contract with, and that they're going to tell us straight up what's going on. And I think some of the best auditing firms are ones that are based out of a lawyer's office, because whenever you do an audit and it's based from a legal point of view, like from the law point of view, and I'm not saying that other firms are not, but I'm just saying that when you get lawyers involved that are also auditors, they kind of understand the accounting side of things, and they're going in and they're looking for the problems. They're not going to hide them. They're going to put a spotlight on it. That's who you want to help your organization. You do not want somebody that you can hire to cover things up, because people often don't want to know about their mistakes. But being an adult and practicing wisdom, you need to know about your mistakes, and you need to put a spotlight on it. That doesn't mean you shame yourself or you blame yourself or you shame or blame somebody else. It just means that you seek out the problem to correct it, so that way your organization can be stronger and tougher, and basically make your organization, I guess, more bulletproof, so to speak, on this. Because you're wanting to avoid problems, not welcome them. And whenever you try and cover something up, that poses a huge risk to your organization, and you also make yourself very susceptible in terms of breaking the law at a state, federal, and local level. International law, I don't think it's really going to matter with this, just because it doesn't look like they're involved with the Canadian Labour Congress anyway. Although international law is important, I'm not dissing that. I'm not, saying that it's irrelevant, because it is relevant. But I'm just saying that this type of union, it seems like it's more at a local and state level per se. Maybe a little bit at a federal level, but I don't really see much interaction in terms of at an international level. So I think, yes, they have members in Canada, but they're not really active in this organization. Hence, their numbers are so low on that. So that concerns me there. And I think also, if you are an international union, you for sure need to have an audit, because you need to know, what is the Canadian side doing? Because, whenever how do I describe this? Whenever you align yourself with a country that is socialist, they don't look at money the same way as we do. We are capitalists, they are not. Socialists spend way more money than capitalists do. But see, here's the thing, socialists, they ruin their currency. We do not ruin our currency. Our currency is very strong. So, socialists, they really don't like people to know what they're spending money on, because their government, they just want you to think that the government should be in charge of everything, and it should just be one big melting pot of everybody's money, and the government decides what to spend, and the citizens do not. That is a perfect example of an auditor's nightmare, or actually, it's a nightmare for the company, but it's an auditor's dream, because they'll find a whole bunch of problems with that. Because whenever you're dealing with people that think like a socialist, they don't have a clear definition of right and wrong the way that we do. I've noticed that. Especially when doing business with socialists and or dating a socialist. Like I've dated some Europeans over the years, and it's just kind of laissez-faire. It's not the same way that Americans look at things, and they think we're uptight and have too many rules, and they, on the other hand, they don't even honor hardly any of the laws or regulations or rules that they have in the books. It's like they're just suggestions. So I'm always surprised whenever there's a European case, in the court system overseas, that it actually goes to court and someone actually goes to jail. Because there's not a clear definition of right and wrong over there. And the reason for that is because, Christianity is not what it used to be over there. Christians, even though Christians are flawed because they're people just like anybody else. Jesus is not flawed, but people are, regardless of what religion you practice. People are flawed, but here's the thing. Whenever there's Christianity, there's freedom, there's democracy, there's capitalism, there's people that willingly choose to do the right thing because they listen to their conscience, like they listen to that gut feeling, and they know right from wrong, and they honor that. And the reason why they honor that is because they are honoring God's law with their life. So whenever you're doing business with people, especially at an international level, maybe that are in another country, if they don't believe in Jesus and they're not Christian, it's very difficult to determine what side of their face they're speaking out of, because a lot of these people are two-faced. And they may or may not always honor their contracts. Like, that's been a big problem. that's why I think most of the business that we do as a country, especially with the United States, it should stay in the United States. Technically, one of the reasons why, or the biggest reason why, we are number one on the planet is because we have so much industry within our country. We actually don't need other countries to survive as a country. We used to be completely self-sufficient. But over time, the more Democrats we've gotten in office, and some Republicans have made the mistake of thinking this way, but the more Democrats we get in office, the more they sabotage the work environment and the employment environment here in the United States, and then they ship jobs overseas or to other countries. And it's like, what are we supposed to do here in America? People need jobs, and they need access to, goods and services and fuel and all this stuff. I mean, look at the gas prices. It's still over $4 here in Oklahoma, and I've heard that it's over $6 in California. I mean, it's ridiculous. So it's one of those things that this is what happens when you put government in charge of things in the private sector. It has no business doing that. So, it all goes back to what I've been saying about these international unions, especially in regards to Canada. I don't think there's any point in having Canadians in our labor unions because they're socialists. And they come from a socialist country. Even if they are not socialist on an individual level, their country is socialist. So all they're going to do is just try and brainwash us. And it's like, you know what? I don't want us to be brainwashed. I don't want us to be socialist. What's interesting is that these labor unions, they join us. We don't join them. So they want what we have. Well, let me be very clear here. You can't have what we have. You're not American and you're not the United States. Just because we live on the same continent, that doesn't mean you should have everything that we have. We are independent of you. I love you, Canada, but we are not the same. We just are not the same. And again, I love my Canadian listeners. You guys are awesome. But you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about because you know that especially in regards to your health care, you can't hardly get the medicine that you need or the procedures that you need done. Most of you have to come to the United States to get your health care. So that's why there's so many people that come to the United States and then they join our organizations because their countries suck. And it's like, why are we allowing them in our organizations if their countries suck? Like, we need to be aligned with people that are like-minded, not so different and so bizarre and that don't understand how to run a country and don't understand how to properly operate a place of business. It's really weird to me. It's really weird. But anyway, I will go ahead and end this podcast. But until next time, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole, that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.